Welcome to Frankly Speaking, the podcast on responsible business by Frank Bold, the European public interest law firm. I'm Richard Howitt, and after leading responsible business issues inside the European Parliament for many years, I host our discussion of the latest developments in the fields of corporate sustainability, sustainable finance, business and human rights. Today, corporate human rights due diligence is sweeping Asia with initiatives in Japan, Korea, Indonesia, and most of all Thailand, where the government has proposed the continent's first mandatory corporate human rights legislation, the Draft Act on the Promotion of Business Conduct. Why is Thailand bringing forward this legislation, and what are the lessons for other countries in Asia and worldwide? To discuss this, Frankly Speaking welcomes Nareeluc Pairchaiyapoom, Director of the International Human Rights Division at Thailand's Ministry of Justice. Nareeluc is responsible for steering the legislation through the Thai Parliament. Nareeluc, welcome to Frankly Speaking.
สวัสดีค่ะ Hello everyone. Nice to meet you, Richard.
And very much you. Now, we always say human rights are universal, but their responsible business attitudes towards what is the responsibility of business differs in different countries and regions because of local culture. And I just understand what's the understanding of the responsibility of business in Thailand and in Thai culture.
I think for the overall picture of the business sector in Thailand, the idea of business and human rights is still mixed with the corporate social responsibility. But actually, corporate social responsibility is a voluntary corporate initiative, focusing on the positive contribution to the society. But BHR, business and human rights, is something that more than that. So it's emphasized on the responsibility and the awareness of the organization and of course and also the staff, and how to integrate human rights or instill human rights into their work and avoid contribute like adverse impact to the society. So this is more I think responsible business conduct is more to ensure responsibility of the operation of the business. So I think they are still mixing between these two concepts among the business sector in Thailand. So when we have every time when we have session awareness raising session with them, so we need to emphasize on the difference between these two concepts.
And so the second concept, the business and human rights concept, and what you've described is true in many countries of the world where companies are learning about the concept. They've got older attitudes towards philanthropy or social responsibility, which aren't wrong, but they're not the same as upholding respect for human rights. So if that doesn't come from the companies, where is it coming from?
In Thailand, it's come from the reason behind it is because the number of complaints related to the adverse impact on community is increasing, causing by the business operation. Because in the past, when we talk about human rights violation, everyone will think about violation from the government officer towards the individual, or the human rights violation between individual and individual. But during the past 10 years, the number of complaints is increasing in terms of human rights violation causing by business sector. So that is why Thailand decided to accept the recommendation from Sweden at the Universal Periodic Review, the second cycle of the Universal Periodic Review of Thailand in 2016. And then after we accept recommendation from Sweden, that Sweden recommend us to address this problem by applying United Nations Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights, and also develop the National Action Plan of Business and Human Rights to implement to encourage promote responsible business conduct, and also to address the problem of human rights violation by business. So that is the beginning of the story. And then after come back to Thailand, the government assigned the Ministry of Justice by my department to move forward these issues in Thailand. So that is the beginning of our journey, and then we after that we have done quite a lot in terms of trying to promote and also develop the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. Yes.
Let me just explain for the
Yeah.
non-specialist listeners that the
Okay.
Universal Periodic Review takes place in the United Nations Human Rights Council. Every country um, uh, uh, in every, is it 2 to 3 years, does a report on how far it's complying with the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. And other countries get a chance to comment and ask questions. And Sweden doing so obviously was very influential for Thailand. But on the National Action Plan, so this is the idea again, country by country throughout the world. Most countries now, I think, have national action plans. So how are they going to implement the UN guiding principles? You introduced the first one in 2019, I think, in Thailand. But as part of this latest set of developments from your government, you've revised it and you've updated it. I think the listeners will be very interested in what changes have you made and why did you make the changes?
Okay, let me explain about the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights in Thailand. Is of course, as I mentioned earlier, it came from the intention to implement the United Nations Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights into Thailand, into practice in Thailand. And the first NAP was developed in was announced in 2019, and then the second NAP was announced in 2023. The first NAP valid from 2019 to 2022, and then the current NAP is the second NAP valid from 2023 until 2027. The National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights in Thailand is a mix between voluntary measure for the business and obligation for the state. And if you go through our NAP, for the government sector, there will be a table listed of activities, indicator, time frame, linkage between national strategy, UNGPs, and also SDG. And then when we follow the outcome of the NAP, we follow through this list of activity, which is quite easy. But when it's come to the business sector, it it doesn't have that kind of table, but it just set minimum expectation from the government towards business because it's a voluntary measure. So we just set up what we want, what expectation, just tell them the expectation of what we want to see from them, what we expect from them. And then they have also the duty to report back to the government at the end of the year as well, but it's voluntary. So it's really depend on them. So the something that different from the first NAP is that in Thai NAP we focus on four key priority area. The first one is we usually call it LADI, LEDI. The first one is on issue of labor. Second one is on issue of environment, which is actually cover the land, community, natural resource, and environment. The third one is D is stand for Human Rights Defender, and the fourth one is I is actually cover cross-border investment and multinational enterprise. The first NAP, the biggest chapter of the first NAP is labor, but the second chapter, the current one, the biggest chapter is E, which is the environment. It include the new emerging issue like PM 2.5, the climate change, the carbon emission, the waste, something like that, and green energy, something like that. I think this is quite in line with the global trend as well, that will be more focused on the environment issue. So this is the difference is in this issue, like combine add more emerging issue into the E, and the biggest chapter is E.
And of course, that does reflect the fact that environment has very much come into human rights due diligence in the last few years. And so it's interesting that that's been the area that you've been expanding. Now, let's come on to the due diligence law. it's still going through the process, so it's not finalized, so we don't know all the aspects of it. But would you give us a flavor of perhaps what's unique or special in the legal proposal that you're bringing forward?
Mhm. The human rights diligence law is actually come from the pain point analysis of our NAP, because when we implement the first NAP, and now we are in the second phase of the NAP, and we found that only for the government sector, because it's obligation for the state. For the government sector, it's easy for us. 100% of the relevant agency report back to us. But for the business sector, um, not every business sector report back to us because it's a voluntary. So when they only, I would say, only good student report back to us. So this is kind of our pain point. So we want to upgrade from voluntary measure to the mandatory measures. And also, I think with the legally and binding instrument, it can kind of create or increase the effectiveness of the implementation of the law of the law as well, and kind of a little bit make it a little bit enforcement for the business to be more responsible as well, and they have to abide by the law. And in our the human rights diligence laws, now we have 5 chapter, 40 including in total is 41 sections under this law, and is comprised of the human rights diligence measures, and we set up the national mechanism to monitor the human rights due diligence. And also this the one of the special thing in this law is that we also include the incentive into this law as well, and to encourage them to be responsible. And also, apart from the carrot, we also have stick. We have a punishment on in this law as well. But anyway, the law is only at the beginning stage, so there are a long way to go. So we have just finished the first, actually second draft, but we have to bring it into the committee and revise it in a to make it in line with our kind of legal context, and maybe adjust some words into the legal term. Mhm.
Of course. Um, how have the businesses responded? You said some carrot, but some stick, and businesses often don't like the stick. How have businesses responded to the fact you've brought forward this proposal?
Mm. Of course, a good question. I think is that I think when we have the consultation with business sector, we only have at currently we only have 2 consultation. For the first consultation, of course, these 2 consultation we receive the same response, same feedback. So, but the consultation is mixed group between government, NGO, business, and international organization. So for government, international organization, and the civil society sector, they really vote in favor of this law. But for business, of course, a strong pushback by business sector. They say they have so many laws already, so why don't we need more law? Well, they don't need more law. They don't need more kind of obligation and any rules for them. And they say if we just issue they say NAP is already enough. And they said, and some of them even say that we can just issue the guideline. We don't have to upgrade into the law. Just the regulation is fine, but they don't ready for the law. So majority of them kind of quite push back on this law. But some of them, like for big company who already, as I mentioned earlier, a good student, they have no problem on implement this law. So this kind of the mixed feedback. Mhm.
But your government is determined to carry on with this.
Yes.
What do you think the motivation
Mhm.
is of the government?
Um, the motivation of the government is they want to be the best or the first in Asia. Kind of, they want to be the role model for our friends in the region. And as in our success story on the NAP journey. We are the first country to enact the NAP in Asia, and then many countries in the region follow us on, and they look at us as a good example or the best practice. And I myself, my team, and my boss, we teaching and share our experiences with our friends regularly in the region. So I think one of the motivation in Thailand is that they want to be the government is aimed to be the best in Asia and the kind of the first country in Asia that can announce or enact this law. Mhm.
And good luck with all of those discussions with other partner countries in Asia, because I think you're playing a really important role.
Mhm. Mhm.
And a lot of business and human rights specialists who listen to this podcast will praise you for undertaking that role. I think also
Thank
it's
you.
important to say that Thailand's not a developing country, it's an emerging market, and that you aspire to be a member of the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, which is sometimes called the Rich Man's Club. Emphasis on the word man. But some people say that that's also part of the motivation for the Thai government, that you see that bringing in this mandatory human rights due diligence is helping to qualify you for the OECD. Is that right?
Mhm. Yes, in Thailand is already applied to become member of OECD, and out of the 10 milestone, we are at the five level five, like milestone number five. So we're hopefully to achieve to reach the milestone number 10 soon. So of course we are have a strong ambition to become member of OECD. But of course, to become member of OECD is not easy. And there are so many things that we have to do, not only on the issue of responsible business conduct, but other issue as well, like corruption and competition, business competition, and so many investment, something like this, so many issues that we need to be achieved. But our ministry is leading on the issue of responsible business conduct. So when we first heard about the ambition of our country, we are also surprised as well. But I think the government is believe that by becoming member of OECD, we can get kind of benefit in economic benefit or has a more opportunity for business trade competition, something like this. And of course, the government has announced the accession to become member of OECD as one of the key priority policy of the government. So this is when the political will is clear, then every government agency must go through that goal. So of course, this is a very important goal for us. Mhm.
The very fact that to become a developed country in the world, part of the definition of that is respect for human rights by business is, again, I think there'll be a lot of our listeners who will think that's a marvelous lesson coming from Thailand in all of this. Now, to deal with the more sensitive areas, you've talked about the complaints that there've been about human rights violations, and that the new law is partly a response to that. And a few years ago now, there were headlines about particular bad labour practices and labour violations in the maritime and in the seafood sector in Thailand. And actually, the International Labour Organization got involved with the Thai government, and together you've put a lot of those things right. But in countries, there are two responses when you get those sort of allegations of violations. The first one is, no, they're not happening here, or it's not our fault, or, to try and sort of sweep it away, and for the government of a country just to just try and defend its companies, even if they're responsible for poor practices. And the second response is the one that you've taken, which is to not deny that there are problems, to recognize that you're serving your own population and that this is about how your own population is dealt with, and to try and do something about it. Now, not every country takes that second route, but you have. And again, I just wonder what was going on in Thailand that perhaps makes that difference.
Mm. Mhm. I think because we maybe because at the beginning as a Ministry of Justice we propose it as a national agenda to make sure that every sector are aware of this problem and also understand about the goal and how we can coordinate to tackle this problem. So by punishing company only punishing company is not the answer or the way out or not the way that we can address this problem, but to address the problem of violation by business sector, it needs a strong collaboration from every sector, not only the government but also state enterprise, business sector, civil society sector can also help monitor and also kind of investigate this kind of thing as well and bring up the complaint. And international organization can also involve in addressing this problem by bringing in the idea and knowledge of international standard and uh, make us aware what is the gap and what is the challenge and what we should improve ourselves. And of course, the independent organization like National Human Rights Commission can also provide recommendation from the government. So I think to tackle this problem is not only about punishment of company, but it needs a strong collaboration between among all stakeholders to make sure that the solving this problem can be effective and be everyone are aware of the sense of responsibility, aware of the ownership and owner of the ownership of this problem. I mean, they have to aware that this problem is related to themselves as well, and they have to join hand in tackling this problem. Mhm,
That's a great answer.
mhm,
And I think for those in business who are listening, who are worried about this and they're worried about being penalised, that's the best answer. That this isn't just
mhm,
about penalising companies; it is about collaboration and helping companies to do better. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Um, we've had on the podcast before um, representatives from developing countries, and there's been uh, a feeling sometimes from their governments that this this is not for them. It's the global north, the rich world, imposing standards on the global south. So you're talking to us from the global south in economic terms, not just geographic terms. When you hear that argument, how do you respond?
Hmm. Um, I think when I because I'm working on the issue of human rights, so many times when we explain it, we will get kind of feedback that, oh, this is an idea of from the Western country or from the global North, but this is not suitable to our Thai context, something like that. But actually, I think many people will think we agree with that idea, but actually, this is not about the I don't agree with that idea, because I think the why I think we can get some bring some good practice from the global north and apply into our global south context as well. The benefit of bringing this international or good practice into the practice in Thailand, the benefit may not come in the monetary in not in the money or not about any kind of economic benefit, but it can also help shaping their company in to be to be responsible, and this is benefit for their staff, benefit for the community that in the company involved as well. So I think bringing the good standard into practice into our country is not only about the benefit on money, but it also benefit for the company themselves, so they can apply it into their own context and apply it into to within the organization, and also to avoid, contribute causing any adverse impact to community. So it's more the benefit will be for all stakeholder involved.
Again, a classic answer. I'm sorry
Mhm.
to say that. I'm sure there are some problems with your approach, but the idea that this is actually about benefiting the Global South and standards for people in the Global South, that was a very, if we're talking responsibility, I think that's a very responsible answer on behalf of your government. Couple more questions I want to ask before we finish. You've been looking, I'm sure, at what's going on in Brussels and in the European Union at the moment, also in the United States, where they're instead of advancing human rights due diligence and environmental due diligence, there's an attempt to push it back. When you see that happening, how do you respond, and does it affect what you do?
Of course, absolutely. It really affect to what I'm doing, because when we explain about the law, then one of the reason that we explain the reason why we have to create this law is not only about the challenging in terms of enforcement of the NAP, but one thing is that we have to explain about the global trend and the European movement in this regard as well. And but then we usually receive the question from the business sector that why European country has so many regulation, why don't combine it into one or something like this. And also some of them who follow the movement in the EU at the moment, they sometimes pose a question to me. The European is now, looking for to amend these regulations or simplify the reporting procedures. So why isn't it Thailand is moving too fast? Why we have to wait until the EU is already settled the the discussion on this issue. So this is of course affected to my to the journey of us to drafting this law as well, to push forward this law, because everyone will ask us to wait, and we have to also wait until we have to wait to see the movement in EU as well. So of course it did affect to the law, but we cannot stop the process. So during this time, when we also looking closely on the movement in EU, we have to keep revising our draft and to make it in line with our Thai context as well. And also we will disseminate the draft and also get more feedback during this while waiting for the movement of EU. We will have to consult with all stakeholders again and revise the law to make it better. And while waiting for the EU movement, we will monitor it closely. Mhm.
Important answer, and I hope policymakers in Europe and America listen to
Mhm.
that and recognize that what they do has implications way beyond their own
Yes.
borders. But
Mhm.
your answer, we cannot stop the process, is both probably a technical one within Thailand, but I think it's also that's a metaphor for what many people say about business and human rights. Final
Mhm.
question. You're a loyal civil servant doing a job on behalf of your government. I congratulate you again for everything that you're doing. But can I ask you a personal question, which is you've learned by doing this work, I'm sure, as we all do in our all of our different respective roles. Tell me one thing that you've learned by uh, undertaking this work.
Mm. To me, I think I've learned a lot to balance the need between different stakeholders, because as a key agency responsible on this issue and leader on this issue, we have to consult with so many stakeholders, and I found that each stakeholder has different desire, I mean different needs. Mhm. And then one of the things that I have to I have practiced and learned from this is how to manage the balance between the needs among try to compromise, let's say compromise between the needs of different stakeholders. And one thing is that I found that by balance by balancing about the needs and desire of these the different stakeholder, I think stakeholder engagement, the meaningful engagement is the key. So we have to open for them to have a dialogue and provide them a safe space to speak for, especially for the CSO. And of course, sometimes we have to also listen to the voice from the ground, and also we also have to listen to the boss, the policy level as well. So I think we have to listen and think about their concern and their feedback, their inputs carefully, and try to make it in a more balancing way. So just like I'm doing on the NAP implementation or drafting the law, not to how to say not make it in the middle. I mean, in a make it something, make the law to be something acceptable for everyone, and not too low qualify, but not too strong, qualify. I mean, not the strong request for them, but make it like a mid in the middle way. So make it try to compromise everyone, but it of course it has to be effective as well.
But that role of conciliating between different stakeholders is obviously an important role of government. But also when you go to the UN annual forum on business and human rights, they always say that the victims and the civil society organisations that represent them aren't really as in the forefront of the process as they should be. And in Thailand, that's clearly not the case. Your government's giving space and respect to the actual victims and to those who they represent. It's been an enormous pleasure to meet you in this podcast. We've heard that the Thai government is determined to be the first in Asia to pass a mandatory human rights due diligence law for companies. We've heard how that came out of the Universal Periodic Review in the United Nations, the actual worldwide process by which we're advancing business and human rights, and the National Action Plan that your government adopted in response to that. It's called Lady, which is a very nice title, but the E is for environment, and environmental due diligence has been a big extra push for you in the latest update. The decision to move towards a mandatory law in Thailand, we've heard, was because there just weren't enough companies complying with the voluntary guidelines. And we've heard how this isn't just good for people and conditions in Thailand, but the government there sees compliance with the OECD guidelines and businesses' human rights as part of what qualifies them to what they hope will be membership of the OECD and becoming a fully developed country status. We've heard that companies are not penalised in this process. There's a bit of stick as well as carrot, but it's about collaboration to improve standards. And we've also heard how the developments in the EU and the US really are pushing back the pressure in countries like Thailand. And policymakers need to understand that the impact around the world, not just within their own jurisdictions, but in a very optimistic way at the end. Nareeluc said, you cannot stop the process. Nareeluc, thank you so much for joining us, and it's been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's nice to talk to you too, as well. Thank you.
You've been listening to Frankly Speaking, the podcast on responsible business from Frank Bold, the European Public Interest Law Firm. Do give us any feedback on the issues that have been raised in this podcast, either on our LinkedIn page or through comment via your podcast provider. Please also do share this conversation and give this podcast a 5-star rating. And don't forget that you can watch the podcast now on YouTube as well. Thank you very much indeed to Nareeluc Pairchaiyapoom, Director of International Human Rights Division in Thailand, for joining us. And thank you to all our listeners too. See you next time, and goodbye.